Hi, everyone. Welcome to the House Democratic Caucus. It's Tuesday, February 24th. Hopefully everyone had a great weekend. I know in my household, we wish we would have gotten 3 feet of snow there. I'm very jealous. We'll have to think about this. My name is Lori Houghton. I represent the city of Essex Junction. A couple announcements, and then we can go right into the 5 bills we have. So really quick announcement on floor times. This week, we're sticking with this week and the week after break. We're sticking with 10, 3:30, 3:30, and 9:30. And in the week of the 17th, we will go to still 10 on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday will be 1 o'clock. And then Friday will be 9:30. That will stay that way till the end of the session. More things you never know that happens at the end of the session. Does anyone have any member announcements? Anyone bring up? Okay, great. So we're going to start with H 542, an act relating to terminating testing of schools in Vermont for, and I am not going to say it, I'm just going to say PCBs. But I'm going to test you with PCBs.
I am also not going to try to pronounce the name of the chemical. Everybody, Peter Conlon from Cornwall, Chair of the House Education Committee. H 542 is a bill that effectively puts an end to the indoor air testing for PCBs, which has kind of a history that goes back to 2001. But what the issue currently is that we have on the books a deadline that all schools, independent, recognized, and public, must be tested by the state doing indoor air quality by 2027. But bottom line is there's no money for it. This all began in 2021 with a small late addition to the budget that required all schools to do indoor air testing for PCBs. Had the Department of Health come up with all sorts of new action levels, and then set a deadline that all schools must test by 2024. Again, there was no money attached to it until 2023, and the legislature appropriated $32 million back when we were flush to do this work, 16 of which went to Burlington to help remove for the cost of removal of all the PCBs from the deconstructed high school. The other 16 went towards the indoor air testing program and to do all of the remediation required when schools exceeded what they call the school action levels or the immediate action levels. That money is gone, was gone last year. And since then, the state moved about $9 million out of a solid waste special fund into this to continue to help those schools that had exceeded the action levels. That money, there's about $4.5 million remaining. That's pretty much earmarked for one school to finish their remediation. So this bill essentially it's 6 pages to basically say the deadline is removed. No further schools are going to be required to test. That any money that remains needs to be used for those schools that have been affected, that have been tested and exceed the action level. And then ask for a number of reports from the Agency of Natural Resources about how many schools are left to test, how much is left to do with the schools that have been tested. In testimony, what we have heard is that with the exception of Green Mountain Union High School, for which the remaining sort of $4 million is earmarked, pretty much the other schools that have been tested and have exceeded action levels have gotten their levels to a point where between fans and other mitigation and restrictions from time use of some spaces that they believe that the students are not being exposed to any levels that the state deems an action level. You might recall, for those who've been around, a couple of years ago, we tried to put an end to the program, seeing the end of the money. That was fought very strongly by the administration. However, at this point, they have not proposed any additional funding through this. So there's about $4.5 million left. It's pretty much earmarked for one school. The deadline is still on the books. This seeks to get rid of the deadline and make sure that all remaining dollars are put towards those schools who still need remediation. That's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Great. Any questions?
I will just say one thing while the mic is being passed around. This is not about the science. It's not about PCBs. This is simply about the fact that there is a deadline on the books and there is no funding to help those schools that are under that deadline.
Thank you. I'm Candace White from Waitsfield. I do have a question about the science, but just trying to understand if a school has proven that there are heightened levels of PCBs to the point where they need to be remediated, what is the understanding of health impacts to the school population?
That's probably a question better for the Commissioner of Health than for me. I think it's fair to say that, first of all, I should also clarify, this only applies to the indoor air testing program that the state created in 2021. Does not apply to the requirement that when you do a renovation or demolition of a building, that there's all sorts of federal and state requirements for testing there. So it does not apply to that. So the testimony we have received says that that the schools that have been tested, that have been shown to have action levels above those created by the state, have been remediated to a level at which the state believes it is safe for both adults and children to be in.
But we still have a number of schools that haven't been tested.
Correct.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Now, when is this?
So this is currently in appropriations. They may vote it out as soon as Wednesday, which means it could get to the floor on Friday. That is unclear. If it doesn't make it, then it'll be early the following time that we are back.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you. So if you have any other questions, reach out to someone on education. We're going to go to H778, an act relating to dam safety with Representative Jacob.
Thank you. H778 is an act related to dam safety, really emergency operations planning by municipalities. We've been working with the state dam safety program and the Department of Environmental Conservation, we as a body, since 2018, if not earlier. In 2018, we passed Act 161 to improve the state's ability to ensure public safety related to state-regulated dams. There is rulemaking that's coming out of that actually is just about to be finished. There's a variety of things that happened then. And then we also passed Act 121 2 years ago, the Flood Safety Act, that had a variety of actions related to dams and dam safety. So here's a little background before we get to the bill. We have about 1,000 state-regulated dams in Vermont. We have a smaller population of about 77 dams population, about 77 dams out of that 1,000 that are considered high hazard dams. That means that downstream, if there was a failure or something happened to that dam, there's be a population at risk of loss of life. So a high hazard dam does not mean that there is, has nothing to do with the condition or the risk of actual dam failure. It is simply that if there was a dam failure, downstream there would be the potential for loss of life. So we have 77 of those 1,000 dams, state-regulated dams, where at least one person is at risk. We have 33 with over 100 people at risk. So this bill focuses on high-hazard dams with over 100 persons at risk downstream of the dam in the case of a dam failure. So Act 121, the Flood Safety Act of 2024, included several provisions, including it set up a study committee that met this past summer to look at how emergency operations plans are developed by municipalities below dams. And we don't really have a requirement for what are called EOPs to be set up by municipalities, but it is a process that we sort of expect and hope And the summer study committee last summer put out a couple of recommendations about how the state would be supporting municipalities and developing these EOPs. One of the suggestions was to do a pilot project where the state would support municipalities and lead the process to develop these EOPs downstream of 2 high hazard state-owned, not just state regulated, but also state-owned dams. DEC owns a variety of flood control dams here in the state. So this bill requires the Vermont Division of Emergency Management, not the Department of Environmental Conservation, but rather emergency management under the Public Safety Department to carry out this pilot project in partnership with the Dam Safety Program at the Department of Environmental Conservation. This would result in EOPs for the municipalities below two state-owned high hazard dams, one with a population at risk over 1,000 and one with a population at risk between 100 and 1,000 people below downstream. And the pilot project is expected to take about 12 to 18 months, hopefully will involve regional planning commission. It will definitely involve all of the emergency response and municipalities and state emergency responders in that process. The EOP largely identifies how, in this specific kind of case of a dam failure, how you evacuate people is very different than other kinds of evacuations for other kinds of emergency situations. And particularly in the case of a potential dam failure or emergency release of water in order to avoid a dam failure, all of those municipalities downstream are dealing with evacuations all in a very tight time frame and would need to call in backup. And so one of the things we learned in our committee is how, as opposed to other kinds of emergency operations that EMS and municipalities need to plan for, this one town can't just call for emergency backup to the town over. A whole group of municipalities would need support from many other parts of the state. And so that regional coordination is a really key piece about this emergency operations plans. The bill also clarifies that the governor and the state director of emergency management are authorized to order evacuations when there is a dam failure or imminent risk of a dam failure. We learned as we were developing this bill that there's some disagreement around whether that is already the case. Our legislative council feel that it is already clear enough in statute, but not everybody agreed. So this bill would clarify that indeed the governor and the director of emergency management are authorized to order such evacuations. We also heard testimony that we're talking sometimes minutes. Ideally, you have hours, if not days, knowing that something could be coming, but you might only have minutes or an hour. So we felt that was important. The bill includes an appropriation totaling $375,000, I believe, or roughly about that for this work for the 2 different departments. And we expect that this will be replaced in the committee of appropriations with standard language such that this pilot project would not happen unless or until resources are made available, but it's just going to appropriations today. So we'll see what happens in appropriations.
Great. Any questions? Great work. Thank you. All right, we are going to move on to H632, an act relating to miscellaneous environmental amendments. Is that a point?
Thank you.
Chuck?
Hi, everyone. Mike Hoyt, Barnard, Bridgewater, Hartford, and Pomfret. Going to report out 632. That's an act relating to miscellaneous environmental amendments. I'll do a very high level, quick overview of the sections, but it truly is a miscellaneous bill. We're moving deadlines, we're making technical corrections, things like that. So quickly going through the sections, the first section, there's a report due on how to manage hard to dispose batteries like electric car batteries. ANR was supposed to report that, and we're amending that. So the stewardship organization for the battery stewardship program does that. And that's something that they volunteered to do. The next section amends the standard for delivery of fuel to a category 1 underground storage tank. To clarify that you can't make a delivery to tanks that don't have a valid permit or don't meet ANR standards. The next involves the Healthy Home Initiative. So this was an ARPA program. to help fund projects for wastewater, drinking water, things like that for low to moderate income Vermonters. Under the federal law, the personal information of the applicants has to be confidential. So this would just make that Vermont law conform to that. So it would also be confidential for us. There's sections 4 to 7 that deals with the Flood Safety Act that was passed in 2024. So basically that act asked A&R to do a number of things, update their river corridor maps, conduct education and outreach, and adopt river corridor development rules. And so what this does is it goes through all those various requirements and it essentially extends the date out. So in some cases, so they have more time. In some cases, when the bill was written and introduced, we've already gone past the date. So that's just a clean up for that. There are 2 sections on clean water service providers. A&R, the public notice and comment period that A&R provides with the implementation plan for a clean water service provider. They had different standards based on the type of project and implementation plan, and they're being made uniform. So it's no less than 30 days public notice and comment period. There are a number of amendments about concentrated animal feed operations. So those are the large animal feed operations. Basically, there's 5 sections where we basically amend language. The suggestion of the Environmental Protection Agency. So those are all uniform. We have 1 section on dam permitting, which provides that when the DEC receives an application to basically remodel, reconstruct a dam, the DOC will tell the applicant the removal of the dam. Might be a more appropriate alternative. We have a section on emergency rulemaking that allows A&R to adopt emergency rules if a federal statute, rule, or policy is changed that will conflict Vermont's obligations. And this is that sunset July 1, 2020. We have a section that deals with hauling waste tires to make clear that a person shall not transfer possession of a waste tire to an unlicensed solid waste hauler for disposal. There's also an A&R waste motor vehicle tire stakeholder process and report that we're asking to be completed by 2027. Then finally, there's a section on the emissions repair program. So the emissions repair program was established by the legislature to provide assistance to low and moderate income Vermonters when their vehicles fail the emission inspection. Currently under the law, whether you qualify for a voucher for this is based on your line heap eligibility. And this would change it to where we're looking basically at like what percent of the poverty line is the worst in the meetings. Another thing we found out about this, just for general thoughts, that this has only been used a couple of times since it's been implemented. DMV had the ability to waive vehicles that failed inspection. That ability to give a waiver ended this month. And finally, it's effective on passage. The vote in committee was 7-4. It just today got sent over to appropriations. So we'll see what happens over there.
Great. Great update. Any questions from anyone? Wonderful. Ellen, what was the vote on the dam safety? Sorry, I forgot to ask.
No problem, it was 11-0-0.
Wonderful. Great, so this bill is going to approach that Mike was just talking about, and so if you have any questions, please reach out to someone on the committee. All right, next we have Representative Shaywater Evans. Lost my notes, H 841 and activating to miscellaneous animal welfare procedures.
Thank you. Hi, Shea Waters Evans from Charlotte. So we have in GovOps and Military Affairs this week, H 841. It's relating to animal welfare procedures. So it's not the animal cruelty things that you've seen. This is follow-up from Act 167 that we passed in 2024. That act established a division of animal welfare and in the Department of Public Safety, and they hired a director of animal welfare. Her name's Lisa Milet. She's currently the only employee of the Division of Animal Welfare. And what we asked her to do in that first Act 1667 is to come up with a report. So the reason that we did this is that the animal welfare system in Vermont is very fragmented. A lot of times, agriculture, the farm animals are dealt with agriculture, fish and wildlife is doing some stuff. State police do some things, county sheriffs, there are animal control officers in some towns, but not others. And it was confusing and hard for people to figure out what to do when there was a true emergency. Fortunately, I'm sure you've seen on the news, there've been lots of different situations with pigs and horses and dogs and all kinds of stuff. So what we're trying to do is bring it all under one thing. Trying to go slowly, take it incrementally, step by step, because we don't really want to spend any money, but we also need to pull everything underneath one umbrella, just to make it easier for everybody. So I know we get a lot of reports and some of them aren't that interesting, no offense to the people who write them, but the animal welfare report is really interesting. It's good. It's good reading. You should look it up. It's on our committee page. So we based a lot of this stuff in 841 on the report that we asked the director of animal welfare to generate. She had 8 months to do it. It's really interesting. So right now there's a current version that's on our committee website. It's as introduced at the moment, but there's going to be an amendment. Did you know that there are really a lot of types of cats? And I was not aware of this, not like different colors, and so I don't know much about cats. But so what my initial request was that we license cats like we do dogs. And I'm seeing a head shake. So there's an actual category thing called working cats, which I didn't know, but the cats have jobs and their job is to protect the farm from rodents. And then there are feral cats and there are outdoor cats and there are indoor cats. Anyway, that was too much. So if you're looking into it, the part about the cats being licensed is going to be removed. There's an amendment for that. I do not want to upset anybody who has a cat. I do not want to unemploy any working cats. I am for the working people and cats of Vermont. So we're taking that part out. One big thing this does is it gives the director of animal welfare the ability to establish rules. A lot of this stuff that sometimes, if we put it in statute and it doesn't work out quite well, and she knows her stuff. So we're going to give that director the authority to do some rulemaking, which I think is important. It's also, we established in 167 an animal welfare fund. And we said right now she can get donations and gifts, but we did not give her the authority to accept grants. And that is important. So we are going to add that. So because right now we have this system cobbled together where it's like nonprofits and animal sanctuaries and all this stuff. When there's an emergency, a lot of the money will come from various nonprofits. And so if the Division of Animal Welfare can have their own fund and get that money directly through, all different kinds of grants and stuff, it'll really help us save some money. The next thing is we are going to establish a 35 dog limit. I had 2 and it was a lot. 35 seems aggressive, but we wanted to make sure we consulted with hunters and the sportsmen and to make sure, because there are a lot of people who use them for hunting dogs. So there's a 35 dog limit. We're trying to limit puppy mills, and these breeders who are unethical. So a 35 dog limit. Here's something else really interesting. So a lot of times in statute it says spayed or neutered, but we are going to change that wherever it appears to sexually sterilize, because you can give an animal a vasectomy or you can give it chemical. I know it seems silly, but you can give it chemicals they call it chemical castration. So spay and neuter doesn't apply to all. So what we want to do is make sure that if you have 35 dogs, the ones that are sexually sterilized don't count. So we're really towing a line here between making sure people can have all the animals they want and need and can breed their hunting dogs and stuff, but also not have puppy mills in Vermont. Same with the wolf hybrids. Vermont is one of the only states left that allows them. And they get almost 70% of them are euthanized by the time they are 2 or 3 years old. And it's because they're wild animals, half wild animals. And so we still allow them, but they get aggressive and they're not appropriate for a family pet or they're very difficult to control. So what we are doing is, we are going to say, if you have one, you have to present documentation that it's essentially sterilized before the age of 4 months old. We're just trying to stop people from breeding them all together. And the last thing it does, there's some other stuff in there that we'll go over in more detail, but it also is going to add a checkbox to the tax form because we are trying to create this department without spending any extra money. And that's it. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Representative Foster from Colchester. I was seeing a lot of emails, maybe because I'm on environment, about dogs being vaccinated, hunting dogs, and dogs that are used for hunting coyotes. Landowners were wondering if there's a requirement, like on a hunting license, that they be vaccinated for rabies.
That's not part of this law. I do believe, though, that if you have a dog, it needs to be licensed. In order to get a license, it needs to be vaccinated for rabies.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
So it's still in committee.
Yes, that's right. It is still in committee. We are going to hear at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, testimony on the amendments regarding the caps and a couple other things. And then we are hoping to vote it out of committee on Friday.
Thank you very much. All right, next we're going to turn to Representative Shai, who's going to talk about the budget adjustment.
Thank you. It's kind of hard to come after working.
Yeah,
cats and
it is a little
puppies
hard.
to talk
Very
about,
dramatic, Bill.
money. So the Committee of Conference met 3 times last week, and at about 10:30, we had a 6-0 vote of the Committee of Conference to vote out the budget adjustment. The Senate this morning suspended rules and took it off the notice calendar, voted it out, and sent it to us forthwith, which I always love that word because it usually means the end of the session, but at this time it means the end of the budget adjustment. So we're happy about that. It's going to be on the floor Thursday or Friday. I'm not sure exactly which day, but before we go home for town meeting break, so we can talk about something we did, which is great. So unlike every other committee of conference I've been on House Appropriations, we did not do a strike all vote. So you're going to see a very few pages instead of 57 pages or something. Because there were so few changes that we made, we had to accede to the Senate, and we swallowed our pride and we acceded to the Senate with instances of amendment. So that's what we did. And a lot of them were things like clarifying that something was one time or where something should come from. But the couple of the biggest things were, first of all, we had put in a placeholder related to developmental services payment reform. The Senate took that up and worked out some things related to dates and reports and how we were going to support the designated agencies so they wouldn't go 17 months without getting payment. And everybody came to agreement on dates and reports and when it should happen. And that's what's now in the budget adjustment. The second thing was that we had put in $30,000 to the Vermont Center for Independent Living for specific kind of Meals on Wheels for individuals with disabilities who are under the age of 60 and wouldn't normally qualify for Meals on Wheels. At the end of the day, we upped that from 30,000 to 55,000. There was 10,000 on the bottom line, so we added that as part of the increased, and then we took 15,000 from Vermonters Feeding Vermonters and reduced it from 400,000 to 385,000. So we just kind of rearranged the money a little bit, but serving good programs all the way around. And then the last thing was related to Section 8 housing. You've heard a lot about that. We had originally put in for 5 million. The Senate did something else, and then what happens with this is that about every day we get new information. New information comes from the federal government. So if we had waited another day, we probably would have had different language, but this is what we've got now. And basically the public housing authorities are going to be getting their funding in March. And we have asked them to let DCF, who's going to be following this, know, Department for Children and Families, they have to send in letters of intent of what they think their need might be beyond what the federal government is giving. It has to, they have to follow certain federal rules, so we want to be really careful about how that works. And so we'll get a sense of what the need is, and if necessary, it can be part of the FY27 budget if we need to appropriate funds in some way out of the 50 million that we had for federal changes. We used that money last year for SNAP benefits. If it's after the General Assembly is adjourned, the emergency board can pick it up and take care of it then. So we don't have a specific amount because we don't know what the amount is, but we have a mechanism for dealing with it both in session and out of session. So those are the changes, and happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Wow, excellent. So as a reminder, compensation committee votes is an up or down vote, no amendments.
Right, you can debate, but there's no.
Right, right, you debate but no amendments. All right, our last bill is H344, an act relating to procedures for arrest without a warrant. Representative Lemon.
Thank you. I was just called down here 5 minutes ago, so we're gonna really wing this. 744, it's, the whole situation is pretty interesting. I'll give you a little background. This is an amendment to a rule of criminal procedure. Rules are usually promulgated by the courts. And there's a criminal rules committee that the courts have. And this is a rule that oftentimes the legislature also gets involved and can amend criminal rules. So the Joint Judicial Rules Committee, one of the most exciting committees to be on, it meets in the off session, and we met, I think it was in December, about a proposed rule to Rule 3. And what this proposal does from the Judicial Rules, the Criminal Rules Committee, is it requires for after hours arrests. When law enforcement arrests somebody, they need to, and are going to lodge the person, they have to go to the court to find out if they're holding the person on bail, if they're going to hold the person without bail, if there's going to be conditions of release. And law enforcement will often go to the court and lay out an affidavit that explains what happened, and the court can actually decide whether to have bail or conditions. But oftentimes you need the state's attorney to really determine whether the person should be held on bail or not. And some courts require the state's attorney to come in all the time, no matter what the arrest is, but other judges have deals with state's attorney on when they should come or not. Well, the rule that we looked at in December would require state's attorneys to be involved in all situations. And this is really, despite what I said, a fairly boring committee. Except for this, we had state's attorneys, we had VSEA, we had so many people getting a hold of us objecting to this rule because things seem to be working fine as it is. And we are already having trouble keeping state's attorneys, and we want Ian to get enough sleep as a deputy state's attorney, not be woken up every night when he's on call, and of course, all the other state's attorneys as well. So the Rules Committee, though, decided to kick this one over to the legislature, actually on my recommendation, because the reason why the rule was even in front of the Criminal Rules Committee was a change that the legislature had made a few years ago, which was patently wrong. There was just bad language. So we said, we'll take it back and we'll fix it. And when we did, we had lots of people coming in complaining about the same issues as far as having to be up all night. And where we landed was, all right, we're just going to codify current practice and essentially say that the court may, instead of shall, have the state's attorney come in and explain themselves and explain the charge that they want. Well, interestingly, the Criminal Rules Committee met 3 days later, and they passed the rule that we didn't like, despite the fact that we thought we made it clear that we thought that things were working fine. The testimony showed that, and we were just going to codify current practice. So we are gonna go ahead and pass our bill that does what we want for that rule, which is kind of fun. You know, we have the criminal rules committee over here saying one thing, and we're gonna say, no, this is the way you should do it. So it's a very short bill, but I know that was a long explanation, but it's kind of interesting situation. So that's the bill, and I'm hoping it's possible we're gonna vote it out today, if not sometime this week. And I think we're gonna have pretty unanimous, we're gonna have unanimous support in the committee. Happy to answer questions.
Any questions?
Did I get that right mostly, Ian? Excellent,
Thank you. All right, everyone, thank you for coming. Have a great week. And if for some reason I didn't see you, an even better break.